What's going on? It's Jason Heath, and we're talking today about chromatic scales on the bass and how to start out with chromatic scales. And it's a topic that's super important to get into. We all play chromatic scales all the time. It's kind of the foundational scale, really, if you think about it. But they're challenging to get into on the bass, or I found them to be challenging to get into. They don't sit as neatly as some other patterns, but there are several ways that I've discovered over the years that let beginners get into chromatic scales without it being too frustrating, teaching them the skills they need to succeed on the bass. By the way, we've got all of these exercises laid out in a PDF that you can download. Just click below. And we've got the musical examples timestamped in the description below too. So if you want to skip between these three approaches that I have, you can totally do it that way. The first approach I like to take with chromatic scales is to use first and half position and just stay there. So we're playing from an open E, and we're basically playing E chromatic scales. Although if you think about it, there's just one chromatic scale. It's just your lowest note to your highest note. So we're just picking a point in the stream and ending at a point in the stream. But with that said, we're starting on E for all of these exercises. So you can think of them as E chromatic scales if you want. What I like to do is start on E, and we play E, then we play F, so we're in half position. Then we go to first position and we continue. So the finger pattern is open E, then 1, 1, 2, 4. And let's go through that on every single string. So here is this exercise going up to the high B on the G string and then back down. I love this approach starting out because it's getting you going with some of those meat and potatoes notes on the bass, the notes that if we're playing any sort of jazz gig or orchestra gig or anything in between, we're going to be using that part of the bass a lot. I also love that it teaches you one of the main fingering rules, and they're not really rules, they're more like guidelines, but they are guidelines that we like to know and follow, and they'll prepare you well. And that guideline is when you shift up, you go with a low numbered finger. So we're going to go 1 to 1 when we're climbing the scale. Another confusing thing is when we climb, we actually go down in direction, right? So the pitch goes up, direction is down. I think that's obvious as you play around with the bass, but it can be kind of confusing. Up is down and down is up and all that kind of stuff. So this motion, this guideline is super useful in music. We want to have fingers left over when we get to the new position. So by going 1, 1, we're getting into position as soon as we can, and then we have extra fingers. Now, the reverse is true when we're descending the scale. We want to be on 4 and then go back to 4. So that's why this exercise changes in terms of the fingerings, going up in pitch and going down in pitch. It's one of those guidelines that you want to learn and understand, and I get the question a lot, why? Why do we do this? And it's hard. Yes, you can do it the other way. We could do 1, 2, 4, 4, or 4, 2, 1, 1. That's fine, but that tends to not set you up well for passages just practically in music. It tends to be a little bit more out of tune a lot of the time, and you've run out of fingers. That's kind of the main thing. You want to be preparing yourself for what's to come. We do break this rule, but it's a great one to get down. Also, we have ways of checking many of these notes using open strings or natural harmonics under the notes. I'll show you on the G string because it's easiest, although you can get these notes on all the strings. So we have our open G, obviously. And there's nothing to check. It's open string. A flat, kind of hard to check. So I just make sure that it sounds like a half step to me. Maybe I'll use a tuner that's got it visually so I can make sure I'm really locked in. Now, A, I can play that with the open D string, and you hear it sounds good. So if it sounds like this, you know something is amiss. Or if it sounds like this, right? Flat the first time, sharp, or really in tune, and then it made it sharp the second time. But that's a great way to just get comfortable hearing that perfect fifth and tuning to that perfect fifth. And now just a little more advanced, but I would still put this into the beginner or maybe beginner intermediate category. We have some natural harmonics we can check in this position. The easiest one to get is our fourth finger. over the note B, and that's a B. So you can check to see if that note is really in the pocket there. And then a little more challenging, this I'd put in the intermediate category, so don't worry about this one, but just FYI, there is a harmonic under your second finger. That's a D, if I play my open D string. And if you're getting those two notes to speak, that fourth finger harmonic and that second finger harmonic, it means you're right over the string where you want to be. Now that's easiest on the G string, a little more challenging progressively as you go to every lower string. But I just wanted to let you know, you can check all those notes in that position. So this is a great one to get down at first, and it'll build the foundation for the next position. The next exercise I like to do, and I picked this up back in high school, I believe from Rufus Reed's wonderful book, The Evolving Bassist, which I'll link to below. This is a one-string chromatic scale, and it's a really cool pattern. The pattern is 3 notes in every position up to the octave harmonic. So I'll play this exercise and then we'll dig into it. Now, the cool thing about this pattern is its symmetry. We have 4 positions, and within each position, we have 3 notes. So we have open strings, so we just get that out of the way. Then we have 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, and then up here, below the camera, we have F, F sharp, G. So those are 3 notes per position, 4 positions, and the last note is the octave harmonic G. Another thing to think about with this one is that you're outlining a fully diminished chord with your first finger. So you're on A flat, then you play 2, 4, then you go to 1, that's a B natural, then we go to D, and then F. So A flat, B, D, F. We've got A flat diminished chord, and maybe that's beginner intermediate, but it is nice to know and helpful to know what note every finger's over. So I really make sure that I remember what my first finger is supposed to be. Now you can practice that scale on all 4 strings. I recommend starting on the G string and just getting comfortable with this. And again, there are all these harmonics that you can practice under your fingers. So we have those same ones that we did. In this case, we're staying in half position. So we'd play. We've got that one, that high D over that note. Then we have B. We can check that. We have C. We can check that. C sharp. Can't check that on the G string, but I'll show you something in a future video on how to do that. D. We've got lots of ways to check. We can play open D. We can play just D harmonic. E flat, a little more challenging, but E, we can check against the open E. We can play, there's a harmonic under there. It's not an E, it's a B. The same one, incidentally, as right there. But if you're getting it, you're on the right note. And then F natural, you can play that against the D string. And it'll sound minor, it's a minor 10th. Second finger, F sharp, you can check against the D string. And then third finger is octave G. Sounds quasi-easy, quasi-challenging. Yeah, there are some, this is why I don't have people start with chromatic scales. They are a little more challenging. They're a little bit less in the box, but we need them. So getting comfortable with this pattern is key. And so you get it on the G string, you move it over to the other strings. And by the way, you can do the same pattern up the second octave to the very high harmonic, though I would not put that in the beginner category, so we'll save that as well. The last exercise I totally love. It's the exercise I actually use most often before I'm playing an orchestra rehearsal or concert, and it's one that I picked up from Ira Gold, who's a member of the National Symphony bass section and teaches the Peabody Conservatory, and I believe he learned it from Albert Laszlo from the Aspen Music Festival. I know that's a lot of steps, but just trying to give credit where credit's due. The beauty of this exercise is that it has 6 fingered notes on every string, and it's just such an incredibly useful exercise. So here it is, and then we'll dig into it. So this exercise, oh my goodness, there's so many ways to use this. First of all, it really sits in the register of the bass that we're using most often on gigs, right? Hopefully that makes sense. I mean, if I'm playing an orchestra gig, a jazz gig, between this low E and this high E, I mean, how much of the music I play in any given non-pandemic week is in there? Most of it, probably, for me at least. And it also, that symmetry, I found it really kind of dials in my sense of intonation when I practice that. So I just feel like I've become more in focus. I'm a little bit faster. I can almost feel my hands snapping like magnets to those positions. So just a super cool exercise in my opinion. It also outlines, by the way, diminished chord with the first finger. And I like to remember that my first finger is on F to start, then it's on B on the A string, then it's on F again on the D string, and then on B on the G string. So just remembering that diminished pattern right there, I find helpful. And then the beauty of this exercise, especially for an arco player like me, is that it divides really, really well with the bow. So you can divide it by 2, by 3, by 4, by 6, by 8, by 12, keep going if you want. And this is a wonderful exercise that I use just for getting my ducks in a row, kind of getting my coordination going for the day. So here, check out how it works. So those are my favorite 3 ways for teaching people how to get going with chromatic scales on the bass. It's a huge topic for sure, and not the neatest of topics. So there are other places to start, but fairly early on, you want to get a handle on this. It's what you use on a daily basis out there in the real world. And speaking of the bow with that last exercise, if you're new to the bow, check out my video on how to get started with the bow. I'll link up to that right here. Thank you so much for following along, and we'll see you in the next video.